Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. I was making, I thought, a pretty good video, and then my phone ran out of data on me, which is bad, but it did get me to figure out how to, save data on my phone. So in the future, I will have more data. So anyway, I've had some people ask me to talk about the Epstein stuff. I don't know if those people didn't see that at the end of the evolution video, I did mention it, where I basically just said I didn't really know much about it, and I was mainly, and like, if there was something in there that implicated Trump and in like any type of nefarious association with Epstein or underage sex, that I didn't care. That I agree would be, I would be politically, it would be really bad for Trump, but it wouldn't affect my support for him because I already think Trump is shit on a moral level anyway. I mean, that would be a new level of shit. I agree, but I only support Trump for practical political reasons. You know, the anti-immigrant stuff, the anti-white liberal stuff, the anti-deep state stuff. Anything beyond that, I mean, as long as you're going to be anti-immigrant, anti-deep state, and anti-white liberal, like that's like, I mean, generally speaking, that's going to be enough, and like Trump's the best. Like, I've always looked at Trump as just, he's a means to an end. He's a tool. In more ways than one, no pun intended. That you just use in this war against the left. And not everybody sees things that way, and that's totally fine. That's just what Trump support means to me. But like everybody, Trump's got supporters from all walks of life. People support Trump for all totally different reasons. So it's I'm just telling you why I support him. But here's the thing, right? You can go, I have hundreds of videos still up. Now, I do have a bunch of videos that either I've taken down or YouTube has taken down, for me. And how many of those there are, I don't know. There's a fair amount, but I mean, like, I don't save them. If I delete it, I just don't have it anymore. So, like, I don't know. But the overwhelming majority of my videos, I believe, are still up. And there are hundreds of them, and they go back years. As far as I know, I never have mentioned Epstein until at the end of the evolution video, where I basically just said I didn't care about it. So, like, for me, because I know that there's Trump supporters who've changed their tune, right? They were talking about Epstein before, and now all of a sudden they don't want to talk about it. They're saying we'll move on. All right, well, like, those people are being inconsistent, and, for whatever reason, talk to them. But I'm nothing like those, okay? Because I've never, talked about Epstein. I never cared about it. And I never cared about it because I didn't really understand, like, what the thought was. Like, what is it that people think Epstein did, and why should I care? It seems like, because I remember, right, when Epstein died, and under, I agree, extremely suspicious circumstances, seeing, like, conspiracy theories, and I don't say that pejoratively, but conspiracy theories from both the left and the right, saying, like, people on the left who thought Epstein was killed because he had information that would hurt Trump. People on the right saying that Epstein was killed because he had information that would protect, Hillary or some other people and stuff. To me, and I haven't researched the circumstances of Epstein's death, but from what I do remember hearing about it, that it was like the two guards happened to fall asleep, and the security camera went out at exactly that time, and he just gets killed there. And there's this guy. So I don't know. Like, I certainly would not be surprised if it was some kind of murder or inside job. I do know that kind of stuff does happen in prison. Now, I mean, then again, sometimes in prisons, there's times where, like an understaffed place or something will. You know what? No, not with like high security prisoners. Not with like no high security prisoners, yes, but like high interest prisoners, high profile prisoners. Yeah, no, I can't think of any other example like that. Without there being like, because what they're saying is, okay, it wasn't a murder, it was just gross negligence on our part. And it's like, yeah, I mean, look, yeah, okay, that's certainly feasible. I don't know if I'd say it's likely. It does kind of seem like, again, I'd have to look into it further, but like just from what I've seen, if I had to guess, I would say, yeah, he was murdered. I'd say it with no confidence, with no idea who did it or why. But that, yeah. Could also have been something like he wasn't murdered, but like it was kind of like with what happened with Jeffrey Dahmer, where I mean Jeffrey Dahmer was technically murdered, but really what happened with Jeffrey Dahmer is it was suicide by inmate. That he was in it, he was in on it, the guards were in on it, and you can go read about it. It was everything was set up because Jeffrey Dahmer, like I guess for religious reasons, didn't want to kill himself. He wanted somebody else to do it. And then the only guy who wasn't in on it was the guy who killed him, who had to do like 40 years in solitary after that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I really don't have a position beyond that. I agree. It sounds fishy. So the thing is with the whole, it sucks that I lost that previous video because I don't want to have to say this all again, but I guess I have to. So like I didn't like start hearing about all this pedophile stuff, during Pizzagate, during, Trump's election against Hillary. And that involved like WikiLeaks, released emails where people were saying these are like code words that are talking about abusing children. And look, I felt for some of it that I like in hindsight, I would see is like, nah, there was nothing pedophilic there. But there was definitely stuff in those letters, in those emails, and there's a whole bunch of them, but there's a few kernels in there that really are like, this to me sounds like some kind of code. And people are saying back then like, oh, this is code for like something in the pedophilia community. And I don't know. To me, it sounded like code words. And it's one of those things where the fact that either you couldn't ask questions, it's not even that you couldn't ask questions about it, but that your questions would just be dismissed, just like dismissed as nonsense. That makes me think like, okay, maybe there's something there, that maybe like, but I don't know. But then there was something more interesting about that whole thing, and that was the association between, the then White House, Obama's White House, and the Comet Pizzeria in Washington, D.C. And again, this inspired like these massive conspiracy theories, like to the point like that it's like either some kind of ring center for child abuse or even that children were actually being abused in the basement of the place. Look, I'm assuming all that's nonsense. But this guy who owned the Comet Pizzeria thing, he obviously was an important Democrat donor. Like he had visited the White House a whole bunch of times. Doesn't mean, I mean, there's a lot of important Democratic donors. So what? But there were pictures on their own website, I don't know if they're still up, that were like so clearly, like wink nudge pedophilia things. Like these children in positions that like it was, to me, very obvious that it was like had pedophilic overtones. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could, like, for all I know, these guys may very well not even be sexually attracted to children. It could just be their way of being edgy or transgressive, or maybe they are, and they're just pushing the line as far as they go, but they've never done anything else. Or maybe they are doing, like, they are pushing the line. Maybe they do actually, abuse children, but it's not like some massive ring conspiracy. All those can be true. Like if it's like there's no reason to believe it was some massive conspiracy that Obama was involved in or even knew about. Or anybody for that matter. But I mean, I was definitely stand by it that there's that like pedophilic thing. And then I'll talk about this other thing that I talked about around the same time. I don't know if Mike Cernovich's still around. I never liked him, but I did follow him a little during like the Hillary Trump election. And he had this article, not this article, but this like voice conference, whatever, where he gets up there and he shows this article from the Washington Post, like that was already like 10 years old or whatever. Back then in like 2015, it was 10 years old. And it's about one of the Podesta, like, you know, John Podesta, like, was the main man in Hillary's 2016 campaign, but it was about his brother and like the like artwork in his home that had pedophilic tones. And Cernovich was saying, this is the media's way of cucking you. That they, you know, this powerful guy, they do a feature story talking about how he's got this artwork that is like, no, it's not technically pedophilic, but it was like it's there. Like even if you wanted to say, oh, it's just art, like it's art is in the sense that what makes it transgressive is it's got that pedophilic element. And he says, this is their way of cucking you. They're throwing it in your face and saying, what are you going to do about it? And then it got weird because they proceeded to take that article down. And then he called him out on it and they put it back up. I don't know what was going on there. I mean, I think that there probably are a lot of people in power who, well, how about this? We know that that people are part of the elites, right, are into satanic stuff. Okay, the whole Epstein thing, which we'll get back to in a minute, he had that like in his island, he even had that golden calf on top of the temple. Like he had like a temple there with a golden calf on top of it. They really are into, and even though I, you know, don't endorse the guy, don't like the guy, don't watch his stuff, the Roosh has talked about it too, about this like satanic. He's like done analysis. Maybe you guys have seen it. This analysis he did of this video with Celine Dion that clearly had satanic overtones. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm not saying that there's any kind of satanic conspiracy or anything like that. It probably, and then the whole spirit cooking thing, if you remember from the first term, it probably doesn't go any deeper than what you see on the surface. Like they just think like the elites like just kind of think this stuff is edgy and cool and they dabble in it, but they don't take it too seriously. That's probably as deep as it goes. But it is a real phenomenon, this satanic stuff. Hell, the WAP video, like it's so obvious, like the satanic imagery that they have in it. So I mean that's all real there. I just don't know what it means. But going beyond that, we all see it. It's all in plain sight, the satanic stuff. And then they even, like Cernovich says, with them cucking you, they throw in your face that the whole child porn and molestation angle. Again, that could just be transgressive. Some of them may actually do it. I mean, hell, like, True Detective had a whole series about that. So this isn't new. It's been out there. How deep it goes, I couldn't tell you. But they're the ones who've put a lot of this stuff out. Like they're very open about it with the satanic stuff. With the child abuse stuff, maybe it's not quite as clear because maybe there's not as many of them that are as into that. But whether it's going on or not, or how deep it goes, I don't know. But the whole Epstein thing seemed to be tied in with this like stuff going back to Pizzagate, that there is this like massive conspiracy, right? But there's like there's so many people out there who think that something is being hidden with all this Epstein stuff, but there doesn't seem to be any agreement about what's being hidden, who's being protected. What I mean is, like, you have people on the left, and mainly on the left, but somewhere, who are saying that there's info, this stuff isn't being declassified or released because this information implicates Trump or Trump donors or other powerful Republicans. You've got people on the right who are essentially saying the reverse. Although now, like if they were really committed to it, they're starting to have doubts about Trump themselves. You know, they were saying it's Hillary, Democrats, but now that Trump's not releasing, they're like, oh, maybe he's in on it too, you know? And then you also got people, and look, I haven't seen as much as this. I thought it would be a bigger deal, so maybe I'm just not looking at the right places. But you have some people, and then like the guy who really blasted this out there was Tucker Carlson recently, who's saying that what's being covered up is that Epstein was just a Mossad operation, you know, to get dirt on, you know, U.S. politicians or whatever, or maybe even other Western figures, like, well, U.S. politicians maybe. And then he went further and said that everybody in Washington believes that that's what Epstein was. So I don't know. So the one thing that I want to say is, look, I already, like I said before, I never had any interest in the Epstein stuff, and I still really don't. I'm only talking, my interest, the only reason I'm talking about it is because of the reaction to the Epstein stuff. That's what I have interest in. And like what it means politically and stuff like that. If you just ask, like, what do I think, like, is in there, I think probably nothing, but I'm open-minded. But I do want to talk about, like, those theories. You know, but here's the thing, right? If it's just like the Democrats saying I think you can dismiss anything what the left is saying, that the Democrats are saying, like, about it being, you know, Trump's got stuff that in there that's bad for Trump. I think that can be dismissed, because if it were true, then why wouldn't they have released it before this election that it fucked them up so badly? You know, they had access to it, so they could have, like, I mean, they had the ability to release it then. I mean, not only, like, Trump was using their not releasing it against them. So I just can't believe that there's anything in there that's bad for Trump. It just doesn't make any sense. So that leaves, at least, you know, what I mean is bad for Trump directly. So that leaves the two things. You've got, like, again, you've got people in Trump's own base or related to Trump's own base who are saying that, again, like, this is a massive international pedophilia ring that Trump's covering for some reason, or being bamboozled into covering for, or it's some Mossad op that Trump's covering for, knowingly or otherwise. I find the Mossad op one way more believable. I think it's probably not true, but it could be, you know. And honestly, if you know, if the Mossad is gathering intelligence to extort their most important ally, that's not very nice, but I don't know, it's kind of good work, because, you know, you got the law of the jungle, you got to do what you got to do to survive. I mean, like, would I have authorized it? No, but I could see, like, why they would do it. It seems like something they would do. And Tucker's saying that everybody in Washington thinks that that's what it was. So, okay, maybe. The whole international pedophilia ring, yeah, it's just too big. It just seems too big. I just don't believe it. And so anyway, I was watching it today, like, I was reading more info about it today. And because what we can't be disputed, right, is that, you know what this kind of reminds me of is the Obama birth certificate thing. Like, I just assumed that the Obama birth certificate stuff was nonsense, and it was Trump who really pushed it out there, saying we're finding information and stuff. And then the fact that he was refusing to release it, the long form birth certificate, made me think, like, it went on so long that I started to be like, I don't know, maybe there's something here. And I agree that there is, like, weird stuff surrounding Obama's birth. I think he was probably born in Hawaii. I don't think it's a short thing, and that's nothing against Obama. All right, I'm not saying anything against Obama, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. The reason I'm not saying he was definitely born in Hawaii is because there's just, like, too much weird shit. Like, if you wanted to prove that I was born in Detroit, it would be pretty easy. You know, there's nothing suggesting that I was born anywhere else. But like before anybody we've got documents from before anybody knew, like where Obama was from, indicating that he was born in Kenya. Was he born in Kenya? I don't think he was, but it is possible. It is possible. And I mean, it's less likely now that we have that long form birth certificate. But when you had him refusing to release it, to me, it's totally reasonable. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be, I didn't care then either. Okay. To me, it's like, yeah, I'd like to see it. And if you don't show that certificate, yeah, I'm going to have doubts. I'm going to have doubts. I'm not going to say that, yeah, you were probably born in Kenya, but I'm going to be a lot less certain. And showing it, that didn't shut me up. I mean, well, it did shut me up because I wasn't really into it anyway, but it alleviated a lot of my doubts. And what really happened is the people in the middle who were starting to be like, I don't know. And they may not have cared, but an issue of credibility, it was enough to convince them. Okay, so I know that like whatever's released about Epstein is never going to convince the hardcore people, but that's not really the point. You know, the point is right now, it's dividing Trump's base. And here's the thing, guys, like I've never cared about Epstein. I'm one of the people who is more inclined, who is, at least until very recently, like today, I was inclined to just be like, I just don't want to talk about it. I just want to move on, you know, to the important stuff, to like the anti-immigrant stuff and, you know, stuff with the declassification of, I don't care about Obama mainly because I've always kind of liked him, but if we can arrest Rhodes or Comey or Clapper, like I'd love that, obviously. But more like just to use it as a cudgel to get rid of, you know, as many left-wing bureaucrats as we can. So that's where I am, right? But here's the thing, right? You know, these people who are on either in the Trump coalition or affiliated with the Trump coalition, they have been consistent. You know, they were the ones making a big deal about Epstein long ago, like during Trump's first term, during Biden's term, and stuff like that. And a lot of them were really invested. Like, we want transparency on these Epstein files, but it wasn't just them. The people, the Trump people, right, and Trump himself, who are now saying we got to move on, stop talking about it. Well, they were also saying, you know, they were using this like, oh, I wonder what's in these Epstein files that's really going to, you know, like, oh, we can't wait to get them and declassify them. They were all saying the same thing. And now they're saying, oh, wait, no, nothing to see here. Let's move on. Well, you can't really just change the rules in the middle of the game like that. So like somebody like me, I can say here, look, I don't care, because I never talked about it, and I'm not being inconsistent to say that. But these other people are, you know, and some people who I still like, you know, so I'm not, you know, criticizing them, but they're wrong on this to just say it's like, no, you know, it's no big, you know, it's nothing there. But anyway, so what I did, I'm trying to find out more information about it, right? Because I just don't know what's going on. So I watched an interview that Megyn Kelly had done, I guess, about a week ago with Ben Shapiro. And before I watch the interview, I go and read the comments, right? Which are very negative, you know, extremely negative, you know, saying that Ben is, like some people are saying Ben's lost his spine or Ben's sold out. And then a lot of people are saying, well, Ben's just, you know, an Israeli spokesman, you know, so that's why he's trying to cover it up. Well, I'm going to disagree with that Ben's lost his spine or that he's sold out, because Ben's always been a piece of shit. Like, I've never understood his personality. Like, to me, guys like Ben are like the epitome of conservative ink. I think that they're extremely harmful, you know, because like, and then, you know, a guy like Ben was never a Trump guy to begin with. He was he was a Ted Cruz guy. He was into this whole, I don't know if people still say it, but cuck-servative shit. And look, you know, like, yeah, sure, maybe like a while, like when I was younger and stupider, like I bought into some of that like racial alt-right shit. But the thing is, I mean, obviously I didn't agree with the Jew stuff, but the other stuff I did. And, but like even that all stemmed, right, from the anti-immigrant the anti-immigrant stuff. You know, like, and that, like, to me, that was like, so I thought it was like what Ann Coulter said, you know, way back in 2015, maybe in 2014. She said, immigration is the issue that decides every other issue. So there's no point in talking about anything else, right? Because like you can import like let's say you like really support, there's really any policy you support. I know I'm going a little off topic here, but this is important. Like let's say that you think the U.S. should be like you have a real neocon foreign policy. You know, you want the U.S. to be like really involved in the world, like, and that you think that's the most important issue. Okay. If that's the way you feel, it's still like, okay, well, immigration is going to impact that. You know, like immigration because you're not going to get, you know, if we continue to import people who would never vote for Republicans under any circumstances, the Democrats who, they're imperialists too, but they're not the imperialists that you want. I'm talking about like the Weekly Standard types want. So immigration is going to affect that. If if your issue is like pro-life, you want to protect life or something. I'm deliberately mentioning things that I disagree on, right? Because I'm very pro-choice. But you're never going to get pro-life if you keep importing Democratic voters. You know, the Democrats are just going to be able to win every election. Maybe your main issue is tax cuts. Well, you're not going to have tax cuts if you keep importing third world voters. You know, so like what she said is true. Immigration is the issue that, you know, I know like being like a one issue thing, I understand how tiring it can be to people who don't see things that way. But it's just the fact that, like she said, it's the issue that decides everything else. So when you have guys like Ben Shapiro go on and like troll idiot college students, it's like, well, this is all a distraction from immigration. You know, like you're going to elect somebody who says all the right things and does the right thing, does everything right. But if they're like if they're not, you know, at least starting the process of reducing immigration, then if they're not at least working towards that, then maybe they're winning some rhetorical battles. I don't think so. I mean, I think that Ben Shapiro stuff, even if I agreed with everything he said, I would think it was cringe. But I guess some people like it. But even if you're winning that battle, you're losing the war. And that's like, so it's very harmful because it's placating our own base, you know, with this, like, it's basically bread and circuses for our own base while the country gets invaded and the Democrats build this electoral army. So that's why, look, I've never liked Ben Shapiro. And but I found myself agreeing with him because, you know, what they were, like, the commenters were saying, like, Ben seemed like really evasive, like he really doesn't want to find out about this. And I was expecting it to be just that, because that's how little I think of the guy. But, you know, Megyn Kelly is saying to him, like, why can't we release these documents? Why can't we have an investigator? And Ben Shapiro just said, yeah, I agree. We should release the documents. And, you know, we can have an investigator. Okay. You know, I'm all for having it, you know, like appointing some special investigator. I just don't believe that there's anything in there, you know, because he said like the way the DOJ works, right? He said what Ben Shapiro was saying is that what the DOJ said, what they came out and said about there not being sufficient evidence for prosecution, he said he conceded that is not sufficient for public's consumption. Like, he's like, the public should not accept that as an answer. You know, I don't expect the public to expect that as an answer. However, from like a pure legalistic perspective, that it is an acceptable answer. So like in terms of just like the law, that's their only job is to say, is there enough evidence to prosecute? Or is there even enough evidence to release the documents? So they can say that. And then he said, I think that conclusion is completely fine. You know, and, you know, he said, but yeah, we should have more transparency. They should release everything that they have because it's in the public interest at this point, which is how I feel. I was ready to just move on. But it's like I said with the Obama birth certificate thing. I never cared about it, but it got to a point where I felt like we've got to see it. Okay, because this is just, it's getting too weird. So that's how I am with the Epstein stuff. My guess is there's nothing in there. Okay. If there is, I'm happy to eat my words, and I'll congratulate you guys. The people who are pushing, saying we've got to release this stuff, I don't have anything bad to say to them, because you've been saying the same thing for 10 years now. So, Trump and his supporters are the ones who've changed, not you. So, but like I said, even if they didn't exist, at this point, I want to see what's in there. That's how like concerned I am. And I can't imagine that there's anything in there that would change my political opinions on any matter whatsoever. But most people aren't as like, I don't know, dialed in or focused in, or like maybe even one-dimensional as me. So yeah, I'd like it released. Now, there may be bureaucratic difficulties in getting this released that Trump critics just aren't appreciating. I don't know. Like, is Trump stalling on this? Is Congress stalling? I don't know. But hopefully there are the votes in Congress. If Trump's going to continue to stall, if that is what he's doing, then hopefully there's enough to, override his veto and get it to release. Trump's move to unseal the grand jury tests. I can tell you in my family, right, they completely stopped talking about this once Trump made that move to unseal the grand jury transcripts. But that's good. That's a great move, I think. I don't care about Pam Bondi was saying like, yeah, we can go and interview Maxwell like if she wants, but like it's clearly just a sop to the base. Look, cool. She can do that. We can have other people do it. I do agree with unsealing the records. Unsealing the grand jury stuff. My guess is there's probably not going to be anything in there, because they're like, even the like real like hardcore Epstein conspiracy people. And again, I'm not saying that pejoratively. Don't expect there to be anything in there. They want the Epstein files. See, that thing is, I don't really understand what files there are. But if there are any files that we have, that we know the government has, that we know the Trump administration has, that they are refusing to release, yes, we've got to release those. I agree with that. I agree, absolutely, we've got to release those. My guess, nothing's in there. We'll see. That's all for now. See you in the next.